I'm going to take you really far away from statistics and numbers to a time long before PowerPoint. I don't have one. And I'm going to give you some grounding as we go into our congregations for our response to immigration as Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And I want to start with a story that we all share in common, slightly different translations, but this is from Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing near him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent entrance to meet them and bowed down to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread that you may refresh." My father is a pastor, and I grew up in a church that was literally this far. I grew up in a house that was literally this far from the church. So that means that we had frequent knocks at the door and many unexpected visitors at very odd hours of the day and night. There was one woman from our church who really liked our back porch and could be found there on sunny days. There were many interruptions in our life together as a family, some of them frustrating and challenging. But for the most, I am thankful for these interruptions. More often than not, the visitors that came to our door, who arrived at our home, brought stories, experiences, requests, joys, and concerns that spoke new truth of a God that is constantly at work in all of our lives in the most unexpected ways. These visits were divine interruptions, messengers of God. And maybe that's why I've always been drawn to this scripture passage. And it's a scripture passage that has become even more meaningful to me as I've done work in faith communities to look for a faithful response to immigration, a faithful response based in hospitality that is faithful to the community in which there is a long and available memory that sinks the present generation deep into an identifiable past that is available in song and story. What that means is that we would claim stories like the one I just read you from Genesis as our own, that these would be the stories that we repeat in our congregations. We can ask ourselves, what are the stories that we are telling in our worship, in songs, in text? What is the divine story that we proclaim? Are you reminded in worship of your own identity as a visitor, as invited guest in God's creation? And the second mark of a prophetic community is a community in which there is an available, expressed sense of pain that is owned and recited as a real social fact. This means that we can't leave pain in our communities unacknowledged. It means that the immigrant experience in our faith traditions, in our current reality, cannot be told without expressing the pain of leaving home, the pain of unfulfilled expectations, and unexpected and undeserved hostility. How often do we talk about that in our congregations? How often do the real experiences of immigrants come up just naturally in immigration debates? They don't very often. That's one place where our congregations have a prophetic voice to share. When the debate is framed in terms of us versus them, of invasions, of illegals, we have the ability in our communities to talk about this debate as a real and human reality. The third, and I think the most difficult. It's easy to get really bogged down, and what Brueggemann says is that we have to be a community in which there is an active practice of hope, a community that knows about promises yet to be kept, promises that stand in judgment on the present. And this might be the hardest challenge to me. It's easy after a meeting like this with all the facts we face to become totally bogged down. And I know that a lot of us in our congregations, if we feel pretty strongly about these issues, probably meet opposition. No matter where you stand, there's probably different perspectives in your congregation. But one thing that we have in common is that we're to face the world with a vision of hope. Abraham's welcoming of the strangers at the Oaks of Mamre is an act of hope that God was at work through these messengers. Whenever we use language of welcome, hope, and hospitality that translates into action in our faith communities, we are practicing hope. And fourth, we're to be a community in which there is an effective mode of discourse that is cherished across generations, that is taken as distinctive, and that is richly coded in ways that only insiders can know. What this means is our mode of discourse, the way we speak about these issues, will be recognized by those seeking community if it is based in hope, in the value of all human beings, in the prophetic imagination that a better world is possible. And first and foremost, our discourse must be person-oriented. I know we've talked a lot about bills and numbers and walls, but what we're ultimately talking about is people, is brothers and sisters. King wrote, "I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin to shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society. When machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, militarism, and economic exploitation are incapable of being conquered."